With every snap, every 15 seconds, a child in the world dies of hunger. Not the kind of hunger that you often talk about when you yell out, "I'm hungry." You open up your refrigerator, it's filled with stuff to eat and drink, and you yell out to your mom or dad, "Hey, there's nothing to eat." I'm talking about the kind of hunger that bloats bellies, that kills children. And even in less than every 15 seconds, more like every 10 seconds, a child dies of malaria that could be cured not by a vaccination or a pill, but by simply the use of a net for a bed to sleep under, to protect oneself from mosquitoes. For the next couple classes, we're going to look at the global economy, the way we manage our global household. We are all citizens of this earth, and we participate in managing the household, the resources, the wealth, the capital of this earth. But we're not going to look at it by looking at GNP and GDP and the HDIs of really healthy countries. We did that when we were looking at the US. We're going to look at how we manage our global economy by looking at those members of our global household, like those children, who are the poorest of the poor, and then the poor. You know, it makes no sense to say to those children dying of hunger or malaria, the only reason why you're in that situation is because you're not working hard enough, or you're not making good use of what you have, not making the right choices with your life. Because for them, the reason why they are so hungry, the reason why they're so susceptible, I can't say that word. The reason why it's so easy for them to get a disease is because of factors outside of their control. We want to explore what poverty is, and so we're going to take a look at those people who are 1/6 of the world's population, 1 billion people who live subsistence, at a subsistent level. That means they don't have the basic infrastructures that you and I take for granted. They don't have roads, they don't have public transportation, they don't have access to basic structures that you and I just automatically assume. They don't have access to human capital, things like education and health. They don't even have a marketplace really where they can exchange goods. The poorest of the poor. They live on what would be like in the United States $1 a day. Imagine living on $1 a day. And that doesn't even get them enough to feed everybody, let alone afford a medicine or have a shelter. Then there's another 1.5 billion people, and these are the poor. They live on $2 a day per person, and that gives them enough for subsistence living. That means they get enough to maybe have a shelter over their head and food for that day. It may not be there the next day, but for that day they have it. They don't have things like access to clean water or latrines, bathrooms. And we're going to look at how we manage the households in which they live. You're going to be asked to go into the reading End of Poverty. You'll be assigned to look at 1 of 4 countries. Another group will be assigned to look at 4 traps. Paul Collier calls these traps the kind of traps that countries with an awful lot of poor people fall into, that leads to this kind of really serious poverty. And from that, we're going to glean what the household management of our global household is really like for those with the greatest need. And once you've gleaned an understanding of that dimension of the global household, we're going to then ask you to visit those countries again, but in 2014, 2015, to see if that poverty, the poorest of the poor or the poor, if their life has improved any, if there's been any development, and if there is, to try to figure out what caused that development. We're going to ask you, hey, today, in a day in which we live, what number of people in the United States are still the poorest of the, I mean, not in the United States, of the world, are still poorest of the poor? What number of people are the poor living on $1 a day, $2 a day today? And then we're going to have you look at something called the Millennium Goals. What were they? What were those goals? Did we accomplish any of those goals? If we haven't, how are we still working on them? And from all of this information, we're going to try to get an insight into the management of our global household and understand just a little bit global economics. I'll see you in class on Monday.